She was nearly beheaded, and 3 decades later, the attackers walked free. On the night of December the 18th, 1994, two horrible men with malicious intent changed a life forever.
And Alison Botha, at the time, was a young woman in her late 20s with a bright future ahead of her. Born on September 22nd, 1967, in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, Alison led a relatively normal life until a fateful night in December. Alison was returning home from a night out with friends at around 8:30 p.m. She parked her car outside her apartment in Port Elizabeth, unaware of the terror that awaited her. As she was preparing to enter her apartment, a strange man wielding a knife suddenly approached her. This man was Frans du Toit. Frans du Toit went and changed Alison's life forever.
Frans du Toit forced Alison into her car somewhere between 8:30 and 8:45 p.m. and drove off. Frans then went and picked up a friend. This friend is Theuns Kruger. Both men were later on revealed to be seasoned criminals. The two men took Alison to a remote area on the outskirts of the coastal city of Port Elizabeth, and this is where the nightmare began. The two-man Frans and Theuns forced Alison into the back seat of her car and went on to do unspeakable things to her. This horrible assault lasted till around 10:30, but unfortunately this was not the end of her nightmare. After the assault, they decided that they could not let her go, as she would be able to identify them because both men were not masked or incognito. They proceeded to stab her multiple times. It is believed to have been around 37 times in the abdomen and attempted to slit her throat. In a horrifying act, they cut her throat so deeply that they nearly decapitated her, severing her windpipe and damaging her vocal cords. The attack was so brutal that they left her for dead.
Despite the grievous injuries, Alison clung to life. Her determination to survive was extraordinary. Incredibly, she managed to muster the strength to write down the names of her attackers in the sand next to her, using her own blood. Realizing that she was still alive, she crawled to the nearby road, holding her head to prevent it from separating from her body.
It's around 11:30 p.m. Tim Eilard was peacefully driving on a road near Port Elizabeth until he noticed an unusual sight, and as he drove closer, he saw a woman covered in blood that was crawling along the roadside. This woman was Alison Botha. Tian, recognizing the severity of the situation, immediately stopped his vehicle to render aid. Upon approaching Alison, Tian was confronted with the horrific extent of her injuries. Tian, who had some medical knowledge from his veterinary studies, acted quickly and with remarkable composure. He used whatever materials he had available, including his shirt, to provide emergency first aid. He tried to stabilize Alison and keep her conscious, offering reassurance and support. Tien then called emergency services, ensuring that paramedics were dispatched to the scene as quickly as possible. Around 12 at midnight, Alison was rushed to the hospital.
She was under operation for a long time, undergoing extensive surgery. The medical team worked tirelessly to save her life, stitching her head back to her body and addressing the severe internal injuries. And in a miracle turn of events, Alison pulled through and survived the attack and attempted murder. The doctors were astonished by her survival, given the extent of her injuries. But Tian Eilard's timely intervention and the provision of initial care were critical in preventing Alison from succumbing to her injuries before professional medical help could arrive. Alison's attackers, Frans du Toit and Theuns Kruger, luckily were swiftly apprehended. During the trial, Alison's testimony was pivotal in securing their convictions. Her attackers received life sentences for their heinous crimes. Alison's recovery was long and arduous. However, the nightmare still did not end as Frans and Theuns walked free. 3 decades later, despite the trauma, Alison emerged as a symbol of strength and resilience. She refused to be defined by her victimhood, instead choosing to use her experience to inspire others. Alison Botha has since become a motivational speaker and author, sharing her story with audiences around the world. Her story continues to inspire millions around the world, proving that even in the face of unspeakable evil, the human spirit can prevail.